The pyramids of Giza have fascinated and baffled scientists and researchers for centuries, especially the Great Pyramid of Khufu. Imagine this. It's made of 2.3 million stones, each so heavy that a single block can weigh over 70 tons. And yet, the pyramid rises an astonishing 150 meters into the sky. I know. Most of us aren't thrilled about numbers, but these figures are truly mind-blowing. So how did the ancient Egyptians manage to lift these enormous stones so high? Think about it. This would be a monumental challenge even for us today, with all our modern machinery, cranes, and construction technology. But over 4,000 years ago, people with no advanced tools, no machinery, just some basic metal implements and pieces of wood, somehow built this colossal monument. And here's the strangest part. They stacked those massive stones on top of one another without any cement or adhesive. How did they do it? Well, there are two possibilities. Either they had some kind of advanced technology that has been lost to history, or they discovered a construction method so clever, so simple, that no one ever imagined it because of its sheer simplicity. Welcome! Today we're diving into the question, how did the ancient Egyptians build the pyramids? But before we get started, if you're new here, make sure to subscribe and hit the bell so you never miss one of our videos. The question of how these pyramids were built has inspired countless theories. Some are completely dismissed, some widely accepted, and others, well, let's just say they're amusing. For instance, one popular theory claims the pyramids were constructed by extraterrestrials? Yep, you heard that right, aliens. While it might sound far-fetched, there are actually studies and a surprising number of people who genuinely believe this. But of course, the alien theory doesn't hold up. It's just speculation, nothing more. Another strange belief floating around is that the ancient Egyptians were giants. Humans so enormous, they were like the Titans from Attack on Titan. According to this idea, these giant people could effortlessly lift stones with their bare hands, carry them across great distances, and assemble the pyramids without breaking a sweat. Heck, they might have even been tossing stones to one another like it was a casual game. Of course, this is complete nonsense. The ancient Egyptians were not giants. Their tallest individuals were of ordinary human height. We know this because the mummified bodies of Egyptians displayed in museums aren't massive at all. They're just the size of regular humans. If you look at their coffins in tombs, museums, or even inside the pyramids themselves, the dimensions are completely normal, not gigantic in any way. The ancient Egyptians had bodies like ours, just without the modern-day beer belly. Now, the traditional story we grew up hearing about how the pyramids were built goes something like this. They supposedly transported stones from southern Egypt all the way to the pyramid's location, moving over 2 million massive blocks, each weighing tons, across that vast distance. Then, according to the tale, they built a giant dirt ramp around the pyramid, rolled the stones up using wooden rollers, and hauled them with ropes, workers, and pulleys. And voila, the pyramids were constructed. Even though many of us accepted this story without a second thought, let's pause and examine it scientifically. For such a method to actually work, that dirt ramp would need to be made of reinforced concrete. Because a loose dirt ramp could never support 70-ton stones. It would collapse under the weight. Wooden rollers wouldn't survive such a load either. You need steel wheels, and extremely strong ones at that, because we're talking about 70 tons. So the whole idea of a wooden roller and dirt ramp, along with all that other speculation, simply doesn't add up. And even if we assume they somehow pulled this method off, the dirt ramp they're talking about would have to be 10 times bigger than the pyramid itself. Some scholars argue that constructing such a massive ramp, along with the enormous roads surrounding the pyramid, and then removing them afterwards without leaving any trace, would be an achievement even greater than building the pyramid itself. Scientifically speaking, it's impossible to dismantle such a colossal ramp and road system without leaving any evidence. And to this day, no trace has been found. That alone makes the entire story fall apart. Some newer theories attempting to support this idea suggest that while the Egyptians moved the stones on wooden rollers, they might have poured water over them to reduce friction, cutting the force required to move each block by about half. Regarding the transportation of 2 million massive stones from southern Egypt to the Giza Plateau, researchers propose that the desert region where the pyramid now stands was once a riverine area with multiple channels and branches of the Nile. This could have allowed the stones to be transported by water. But ultimately, these are just attempts to justify the earlier method. Even with all these adjustments, the method still doesn't make sense and leaves countless unanswered questions. The biggest one? How did they lift these enormous stones to such incredible heights without cranes, airplanes, or any modern equipment? Of course, no one has a definitive answer. Did the Egyptians possess some device that could nullify gravity in a localized area, allowing stones to float into place at the pharaoh's command? Sadly, there is no evidence for this either. Let's move on to another mystery. How did the pyramid's stones remain fixed together without cement? The old explanation fed to us by those ancient tricksters claimed they stacked stones using something called air evacuation. Supposedly, they placed two stones on top of one another and somehow removed the air particles between them, making the stones stick together as if glued. Yet again, there is no evidence to support this, and it's pure speculation because air evacuation itself requires advanced technology. One of the most astonishing aspects of the pyramids is how the Egyptians made the surfaces of the stones so perfectly flat. The stones are shaped like precise cubes, parallelograms, and perfectly regular rectangles, fitting together with an accuracy that even modern technology would admire. These blocks were supposedly carved. Just imagine carving 2 million stones using only primitive tools and basic equipment, an almost suicidal task. Leveling the surfaces of 2 million stones would require an insane amount of effort and an extraordinary workforce. So the whole idea of carving the stones just doesn't add up. Pretty much all the methods and theories we've heard so far fall apart. All right, peace out. Just kidding. Let's keep going. What if I told you that the stone blocks the pyramid was built from were actually poured in place, just like we pour regular concrete, and these stones weren't carved at all? This intriguing idea comes from Swiss researcher Eric von Daniken and French researcher Joseph Davidovits. Both propose that the ancient Egyptians knew how to create a special mixture that produced artificial stone stronger than the concrete we use today. This mixture was made from clay and certain chemicals which were heated and then dried. Once hardened, it looked exactly like natural stone and could last for thousands of years. Imagine this simple hypothesis solving all the problems we faced with earlier theories. There would be no need to cut or carve stones with extreme precision, no need to transport stones over vast distances, no need to lift them to incredible heights. It's a complete game changer. So how did these researchers come up with this theory, and where did it all begin? It started with a team of scientists searching for a hidden chamber inside the pyramid. They scanned the entire structure with various types of rays, and suddenly the devices began giving inconsistent, illogical readings, even though the equipment was fully functional. The only explanation seemed to be that the pyramid's stones contained an enormous amount of water, far more than could exist in natural stone. This led the researchers to consider the idea that the stones were manufactured or artificially made. Later, Joseph Davidovits conducted a practical experiment, attempting to recreate a similar mixture, and it worked. He successfully created stones of that size that were also tightly bonded together. Today, researchers are working to determine the exact composition of the mixture the Egyptians used, suggesting that it's just one of the many secrets the ancient Egyptians mastered, along with their knowledge of astronomy, chemistry, and mummification. In short, the pyramid stones were like a liquid cement-like material poured into rectangular molds. When the mixture dried, it became solid, cohesive stones. This is how they constructed this monumental structure. They may have even used the same method for other large constructions like temples and massive obelisks. So rather than lifting or moving stones, they were pouring them in place, directly into molds. Of course, we're not claiming that this pouring hypothesis is definitively how the Egyptians built the pyramids, but to a certain extent, it remains the most logical and widely accepted theory. Who knows, maybe one day another theory will emerge that explains it even better. Finally, no one can deny that the ancient Egyptians achieved levels of knowledge in some fields that we still haven't matched despite all our modern
advancements and technology. And with that, we've answered the question of how the ancient Egyptians built the pyramids. As always, if you have a question keeping you awake at night, drop it in the comments and we'll answer it. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to hit like and share. And for those seeing us for the first time, subscribe to the channel and hit the bell so you get our videos as soon as they drop. See you in the next episode.